Welcome back to your news bulletin. 2 U.S. soldiers have been killed and 6 others wounded in Afghanistan Nangarhar province. U.S. Forces spokesperson Colonel Sonny Leggett says an individual in Afghan uniform opened fire on American and Afghan forces. In a statement, Leggett said the military is still collecting information and the motive behind the attack is yet unknown. The attack comes amid a fresh round of talks between Washington and Taliban in Doha to end the 2-decade-long Afghan war. Last month, Taliban claimed shooting down a U.S. military bombardier E-11A, killing a U.S. Army colonel and a captain in Ghazni province. Indian-occupied Kashmir is completely shut down today to mark the hanging of Afzal Guru in 2013. New Delhi executed Guru for allegedly facilitating an attack on the Indian Parliament in 2001, which he vehemently denied. Guru's death has come into the limelight recently after the arrest of a senior Indian police officer, Davinder Singh. In the early 2000s, Guru wrote a letter saying Singh tortured him and forced him to take one of the parliament attackers to Delhi. The Indian government never investigated Guru's letter. Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned India's chargé d'affaires to register protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. This comes after unprovoked Indian artillery and mortar fire killed a civilian and wounded a woman in Shrikot sector. The Pakistan Army effectively responded to the Indian firing, which was initiated without provocation. In a statement, the military's media wing said Indian troops targeted civilians with artillery and mortar fire. It said the injured woman has been evacuated to a nearby medical facility. Earlier this week, 4 people, including a child, were injured in Lepa Valley when Indian forces opened fire on civilians. A Turkey-based think tank panel has strongly criticized India's Citizenship Act, which is widely considered anti-Muslim. The panel was organized by the South Asia Strategic Research Center and Humanitarian and Social Research Center. During the discussion, the attendees said the controversial law has led to nationwide protests in India. The speakers said people of all ages and beliefs, especially the youth, are participating in the demonstrations. Meanwhile, the Indian government has served a legal notice to Mumbai protesters, accusing them of disturbing peace. The notice was served to 200 people a day after police registered FIR against Mumbai protesters and organizers. Moving on to China, where the number of daily deaths caused by the new coronavirus has reached a record 89, taking the death toll to over 800. With more than 2,500 cases confirmed in the past 24 hours, over 37,000 are now infected by the disease in the country. Beijing says the country faces a severe shortage of equipment, including suits, masks, and goggles. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says its investigating team will leave for China next week.
There has been a stabilization in the number of cases reported from Hubei, and we're in a sort of a 4-day stable period where the disease or the number of reported cases hasn't advanced, and that's good news and may reflect the impact of the control measures that have been put in place.
As the disease continues to spread across the world, some major cruise lines have joined airlines in suspending certain routes to and from China. To help control the spread of the novel coronavirus, Russia has sent 2 cargo plane Air China with 23 tons of humanitarian cargo on board. In a statement, the Russian Emergency Ministry said the aid consists of pharmaceuticals and personal protective equipment. Meanwhile, the U.S. has offered $100 million to assist China and other countries affected by the coronavirus. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the aid demonstrates strong U.S. response to the outbreak. 5 British nationals on a skiing trip to France have been diagnosed with the novel coronavirus. Another British family is quarantined on the Spanish island of Mallorca after coming into contact with an infected French national. More in this report.
So far, the spread of the virus has been limited to Southeast Asia, but this could be changing. The British nationals in France contracted the virus after coming into contact with an infected man who had visited Singapore. French Health Ministry has confirmed nobody in this group is in serious condition. 2 schools near the resort they were staying at have been closed as authorities investigate the case.
It is a British national returning from Singapore, where he had stayed from 20th to 23rd of January. He arrived in France on January 24 for 4 days, and he stayed in the Contamine-Montjoie in the Haute-Savoie region.
In Spain, meanwhile, a British family of 4 came into contact with a French man carrying the virus. But only one 10-year-old girl from the family has been tested positive. Test results for the other family members, however, could take 48 hours.
The 10-year-old girl tested positive for flu B, which is expected at this time and which coincided with the person who had symptoms of fever and flu.
Though authorities were quick to respond, the risk from the virus is testing Europe's resolve, as EU citizens could easily pass it to each other. The global death toll from the novel coronavirus has now crossed 700.
The death toll in the gun rampage by a Thai soldier in the northeastern city of Nakhon Ratchasima has risen to 26. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha says at least 52 others were wounded. Chan-o-cha said the soldier was motivated by a grudge over a land deal. The assailant was killed by armed forces after an overnight siege at the Terminal 21 shopping center in the city. Thai Defense Ministry has identified the attacker as a junior army officer. It said he attacked his commanding officer before stealing a gun and ammunition from a military camp. The UN says Libya's warring parties will meet again on 18 February after the first round of talks ended without an agreement. In a statement, the body's mission to Libya said both parties will continue talks to try to reach a lasting ceasefire in a war to control Tripoli. Last week, the UN hosted indirect talks between 5 officers from each the Libyan National Army and the Government of National Accord. The global body said both sides expressed their support to ongoing exchanges of prisoners and returns of mortal remains. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has criticized the sidelining of Africa from talks and has asked for process to be more inclusive. He said the body wants Africa representatives to attend all the meetings as they are also key stakeholders in the conflict. Moving on to Ankara, where Turkish and Russian officials have met to mull a truce in Syria's Idlib province and promote political process. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said the 2 delegations agreed to continue talks in the coming week. The talks were attended by top officials of foreign and defense ministries of both Turkey and Russia. The delegations held an 3-hour meeting which stressed the need to ensure peace on the ground. Tensions in the region spiked after clashes between Turkish and Moscow-backed Syrian forces in Idlib last week. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun says foreign states have expressed a desire to help the country through a financial crunch. He said France is prominent among these countries. In an interview, Aoun said he had a telephonic conversation with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. The new Lebanese government has approved a bailout plan that includes seeking foreign help and cutting interest rates. The government has also warned citizens of some painful remedies for the economy. Foreign donors have also set conditions of solid reforms for the Lebanese government. Saad al-Hariri's government resigned after pressure from countrywide protests against the ruling elite accused of corruption. Israel has escalated a trade war with the Palestinians by stopping their agricultural exports through Jordan. The Palestinian agriculture minister confirmed this in a radio interview. He said Israel informed exporters of the development. A top official of an agricultural company, Hassan Shataye, said the move from Israel is well planned. Last week, Israeli Defense Minister Naftali Bennett said he will halt all Palestinian agricultural imports.
Israel's focus on dates, olive oil and medical herbs is well thought through, since these goods are the #1 competitor for the Israeli products in world markets.
The Yemeni National Army says its forces have shot down a drone launched by the Houthi rebels. It said the drone was downed over the Sada Governorate's as Safra district. A top military official claimed that after assembling the parts of the destroyed drone, it appeared to be Iranian-made. The official said ground defenses shot down the drone, which was approaching an area controlled by the Yemeni army. He said the downing of the Houthi drone did not cause any casualties or damage. A recent UN report has revealed the Houthis are in possession of new weapons similar to those produced in Iran. Moving on to India, where Aam Aadmi Party, the AAP, has crushed the ruling BJP in Delhi Assembly elections. Exit polls predict the AAP is set to win 55 to 65 out of the 70 seats. Polls predict the Bharatiya Janata Party may win 10 to 13 constituencies, while Congress could get 1 to 3 seats. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's party is already on the back foot after failing in recent Maharashtra and Jharkhand state elections. In 2015, the Aam Aadmi Party won a landslide 67 seats and is now eyeing a second successive 5-year term. These results come as the government struggles to contain public anger over the new citizenship law, deemed discriminatory towards Muslims. In Azerbaijan, voting has begun in parliamentary elections today, almost 2 months after a presidential decree dissolved the legislature. The National Assembly of Azerbaijan, Milli Majlis, is holding snap polls for the first time in its history. Over 1,300 registered candidates from around 20 political parties are competing in the run-up for 125 seats. Over 22.5% of candidates in the elections are women. Over 5 million registered voters will be able to cast their votes in over 5,500 polling stations in the country. Members of the unicameral parliament are elected for a 5-year term.
The worsening social and economic situation in the country and the growing discontent forced by executive branch to hold the parliamentary elections 8 to 9 months ahead of schedule initially planned in November. In other words, with these snap elections, they wanted to seize a society that's unprepared.
Azerbaijan is holding 6 parliamentary polls since the country regained its independence in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Moving on, Cameroon is holding parliamentary and municipal elections today amid a boycott call by the country's main opposition party. Elections for the Central African country's legislature and local councils are taking place for the first time in 7 years after 2 delays. Nearly 7 million people are eligible to cast votes to pick 180 federal legislators and 300 local council officials. Cameroon's ruling RDPC, which holds 148 seats in the parliament, is widely expected to come first. RDPC is supporting President Paul Biya in power for the past 37 years. The polls will take place amid heightened security due to separatist violence in the Anglophone regions, as well as the threat of Boko Haram.
I know that the election is taking place 2 days. I don't know where to register. I don't know anything. I don't know anything concerning election. When I was in Kumbambonge, they used to come and give us electoral card in the house. But yet nobody knows me. I don't know.
The official results of the elections will be released within 20 days. More elections from around the world. Ireland's 3 main political parties are tied in first preference votes after Saturday's general elections. Exit polls show Fine Gael secured 22.4% votes, closely followed by Sinn Féin with 22.3%, with Fianna Fáil a tied third with 22.2%. The margin of error for the exit polls is 1.1%. Official counting to elect the 33rd Irish Parliament will begin today in all 39 constituencies. A total of 160 representatives will attend the first session of the Parliament on 20th February. Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar is hoping to secure a second term.
Today is a very important day. Today is the day that the people are in charge, and every single vote counts. People have told us throughout this campaign that they want change, that they want to change in representation and they want to change in government. So I'm saying to people, please come out today and vote for that change.
We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to our news bulletin. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has fired a minister for praising the election of a liberal candidate who was supported by the far right. The candidate Thomas Kemmerich won an election in the state of Thuringia with the backing of the far-right AfD party. Kemmerich's victory with AfD support was seen as a political earthquake. Christian Herthe, who belongs to Merkel's CDU party, tweeted his congratulations later. The tweet was widely condemned in Germany. Herthe was a minister for former East German states and Secretary of State for the Economy and Energy. In France, police have arrested 32 Yellow Vest protesters during anti-government demonstrations despite a ban. Paris Police Department says 140 people were fined for participating in the protest. Protesters gathered at the Palais Royal Square, opposing President Emmanuel Macron's policies and demanding his resignation. Meanwhile, in Bordeaux, police used tear gas and plastic bombs to disperse demonstrators who pelted them with stones. The demonstrations mark the 65th week of protest, which started in reaction to fuel hikes and economic conditions. Hundreds of neo-Nazis from across Europe have marched in Hungary's capital Budapest to mourn what they call a massacre of 3,000 Nazis. They gathered to mark the Day of Honor, commemorating an attempted breakout by the besieged Nazi forces in 1949. The demonstrators of far-right movement laid wreaths to honor the Nazis and their collaborators, who they call heroes. After the commemoration, demonstrators marched from Budapest to a village northwest of the city, following the route of the attempted breakout. Police tried to ban this year's events, but a court overturned the attempted ban less than a week ago. In February 1945, Nazi-allied Hungary was near capitulation and under siege by the Soviet Red Army. Almost 30,000 of them tried to break through the siege to get to Nazi-controlled territory, where most of them were killed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met Pope Francis at the Vatican and asked the pontiff to help Kiev secure the release of its prisoners of war. In a tweet, Zelensky said the Pope does everything possible to achieve peace and harmony globally. The president said he asked for help with the release of Ukrainians captured in Donbass, Crimea, and Russia. Relations between Ukraine and Russia collapsed following Moscow's annexation of Crimea in 2014. The Vatican has diplomatic relations with both Kiev and Moscow. Activists suggest there are about 100 Ukrainian government forces being held in captivity. Scientists are saying record high temperatures set off by global warming are causing the Antarctic ice cap to melt. They say increased temperatures are destroying glaciers and raising sea levels. This report describes how.
Antarctica's hottest day has just been recorded, a high of 18 degrees Celsius. The reading was taken by the Argentine research base Esperanza and is the hottest since 2015. The temperature was recorded on the Antarctic Peninsula at the continent's northwest tip. The UN World Meteorological Organization spokeswoman Claire Newless says the temperature surge is not a figure associated with Antarctica, even in summertime.
What we know is of great concern. The Antarctic Peninsula, so where we saw this temperature record yesterday, it's the northwest tip near South America. It's among the fastest warming regions of the planet. We hear a lot about the Arctic, but this particular part of the Antarctic Peninsula is warming very quickly.
The effects of the warming can already be seen in this loneliest of landmasses.
There's quite a lot of conversation on Twitter at the moment with satellite images showing cracks in the Pine Island Glacier in Antarctica. They've been growing rapidly over the past few days. The European Union has a satellite called Sentinel that's been measuring and monitoring these.
The World Meteorological Organization says 87% of glaciers along the west coast of the Antarctic Peninsula have retreated in the last 50 years. Thus, this trend is unlikely to end soon.
Strangled by debt, Argentina is struggling to relieve the country's poor citizens with food vouchers, price controls, and grassroots markets. But a recession has plagued these measures, forcing France to come to the South American nation's rescue. More in this report.
Buenos Aires is in recession since mid-2018. Poverty in the country is exceeding over 30%, with inflation touching 50%. Access of the basic commodities is gradually getting out of the reach of the masses.
Leche. I had stopped buying milk, which was very expensive. Meat, very little. More chicken, basically that. Milk and meat. They were very expensive. I don't go to the supermarket because it's unaffordable. You have to have a good amount of money, otherwise you don't enter the supermarket.
To give public relief, Argentinian President Fernandez froze the prices of gasoline and public services. Moreover, the government also implemented a price control on warehouses, along with distribution of over 1 million food cards.
The first objective is for everyone to eat well. The second is to create work, a lot of family, farming, grassroots economy, many jobs for people who produce food and can sell it, and the third is economic development.
The government believes that promoting domestic consumption directly with small businesses will revive the economy and create jobs. But experts say these measures will depend on successful renegotiation of debt.
I think it's more of a short-term thing. I think it's something for the immediate future. The fiscal path we have to follow will actually be determined during the debt negotiation, and there we will know by what margin we have to increase spending on subsidies.
French President Emmanuel Macron announced support to his Argentinian counterpart during the latter's visit to Paris this week.
World Oil Supply Regulatory Body OPEC Plus has recommended extending a current oil supply cutback until the end of 2020. This comes as oil demand dips amid the new coronavirus outbreak. OPEC President Algeria's Oil Minister Mohamed Arkab said OPEC's non-OPEC technical panel has also recommended more output cuts. Arkab said OPEC Plus Joint Technical Committee has noted the coronavirus epidemic negatively impacted global economy. JTC noted transport, tourism and industry are major hit by the virus, reducing the global oil demand, sending prices to a record low. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.